morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock, so it's time for another 50 Days to 50 conversation. I hope you have been enjoying these as much as I have. I hoped they would be interesting, and they have been so much more than that. So if you're just now tuning in, you have, 30 some to catch up on. Oh, 50 didn't feel like a big deal when I started. It's become a big deal. Anyway, let's get to today's conversation with my longtime friend, my longtime stage partner, longtime mom of a very smart, sometimes very confusing boy, and many, many other things. Arts leader, to name just a few, my good friend, Carrie Wintersteen. Hello, Carrie.
Good morning, Dana.
I do feel like we first came to appreciate each other over that moment of, so your boy is smart and also like can't remember to brush his teeth. My boy is smart and can't remember to brush his teeth. And I would never bring that up had they not both landed beautifully on their feet in their early adulthood phase of life. And so we can laugh about it now, but those were tough years sometimes.
Yeah, no, I remember talking about it and still wondering, over the years, that sort of like science tells us that the frontal lobe doesn't finish developing until, and you just go, huh, okay, there's where that shows up,
Yeah.
But yeah, they both have landed beautifully, and it was also kind of fun and wacky raising them through those years where
It was, and fun to see them together kind of frickin' frack. They were just like, it was hard to know who was the ringleader of the less good ideas. And they never did anything really naughty. So it was always safe. They were always bright, fun, good boys. And so I think the truest thing, if you're a young mom or parent watching this, or you've got young kids and they're boys and you're thinking, what if this never changes? It does. Carrie and I can promise you, our boys are now almost 27. And is Cameron 27 or 8?
He's 27.
Yeah. So, they're closer to 30 than 20, and it does get better. I promise.
Oh yeah, night and day.
Yeah. So, that was the beginning of our friendship. And then we have all these other fantastic touch points, many of which I really, really value in my life. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on these questions, because everybody's had a great bent to them. So let's jump right in. First question is, what did you know, one or two things you knew before you turned 50 that have served you really well, 50 and beyond?
Well, I was thinking about that, and there was a part of me that thought, I don't know sort of when I learned certain things, but one of the things that hit me right away with that question is that from a pretty early age, I figured out that I need a lot of quiet time to process and make decisions. And that's just something that's a way that I work. And I think the thing that's sort of more broadly applicable for people is, some people talk about meditation, some people talk about prayer. I know you've talked about that importance of having gone away and spent only the time, it's just yourself in the conversation and perhaps the universe speaking to you without all the clutter. And I have to say, I think that that's something that I learned for myself kind of early on, as I was trying to navigate what it is to be an adult in the world, and how would I make choices when somebody else isn't dictating them all the time. How do you read the tea leaves? How do you read the signs? Well, for me, a lot of it is taking the time, moving the clutter, and just being quiet. And it's that, man, is it hard to create the mechanisms, the space, the permission to keep doing that, regardless of where you are in terms of decisions being big or small. The time scale of that, just giving yourself the permission is still the hard thing that I'm learning. But I know that that's a process for me that hasn't failed.
Yeah. Well, I think about something you said to me once because we walked together 3 days a week for years, you and me and my silly pup Lil. And we were walking one morning, and I said to you, I feel kind of guilty about doing this because we would walk after we would drop our kids off at school. So, maybe 8:15 to 9:15. And you said something to me that I have applied to life in so many ways. You said, if this were a meeting with a funder, because you're also an arts advocate and an arts executive, if this were a meeting with a funder, we wouldn't think twice about going to it. We have to be comfortable prioritizing space and time for ourselves. And when I really settled into this job,
Yeah.
my day job, and started to realize that, you know what I need? I need time where someone might look at me and say, are you even working? You can't see it happening, but it's imperative. It's why you'll read, some of those Fortune 10, Fortune 100 company leaders will say, I block off 2 hours a day, 5 hours a week. Bill Gates takes a, month every year, but to read, to do, to think, to whatever,
Yeah.
because your brain needs it. I don't know anybody who can create effectively long-term in the cacophony of, hey, 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 which is in essence what our lives have been since we became adults.
Yeah. And I think it's particularly, apt that you've noted Fortune 500, Fortune 100, blah, blah, blah. A lot of it, I think, this is actually a really standard practice of leadership, right?
Yes.
We talk about needing to get up and out of the trenches and go to the 30,000-foot view. And that requires time. It requires removing clutter. You can't see a big picture if you can't step back
Right.
from being inside
Right.
of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I still struggle with that too.
Mhm.
There is still the part of me that, I always joke, I was raised by nuns. There is something about filling the time and checking off the list and being disciplined and all of those things, and that can be very task oriented. And
Mhm.
I find a lot of satisfaction in doing that, right? There is there is there's also that part of our brain that it, you know it, little chemicals that go, "Ooh, I won!"
Mhm.
When you do that, and the other kind of thinking and processing is much less satisfying on a
Yeah.
burst basis, right? You have to really just sort of, again, trust that process, which is hard to do when there are so many demands and deadlines and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's fitting to note that, yeah, sometimes you need that time. Sabbatical is what it is for a reason, right? People are
Yes.
so much more productive if
Yes.
if
Yes.
they step back. I remember reading the wonderful story of Bob Dylan and having come off a tour, and he was going to give it up. And when he went away to a cabin and just like, it's all done. I'm not doing that anymore. And he woke up, and like the next thing he wrote was one of his best hits because he just couldn't, it just like blah, flowed out of him.
Sure.
And I just think, creativity works well in that way. I think leadership works well in that way. I think processing complex feelings sometimes has to
Relationships
work that
sometimes
way.
work well in that ways. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I agree. And it really is, we are so task oriented. We are so um, reward driven. Get
yeah,
the blue ribbon for crossing the line. Well, I might execute something at the Arts Partnership that I've been thinking about and talking about with key people for 4 years. Well, that
which
is
is,
a really long race to run.
yeah,
Nobody would say, hey, you're going to find real satisfaction in this in approximately 48 months. That nobody would say yes to that. So it
right.
really is about setting aside how we perceive success and playing that very long game. Um, and I think there is absolute value to it, but it requires a different kind of tenacity and a different kind of patience than our day-to-day work. So I love
Yeah,
that.
and permission. the constant permission.
Yeah.
It
Well,
may
because
look
as
like
I
I'm
said to
not doing
someone,
anything.
yeah, I said to someone the other day, when I worked at a grocery store in high school, if no one was in the store, they didn't say, well, just go home. They would say, why don't you go pull the cereal boxes to the edge of the ledge? Or why don't you go make sure that all of the detergent caps are screwed on tightly? Or, busy work,
Yeah.
because that is the nature of that job. Well, school is largely busy work. Those early jobs are largely busy work. So when you get to a job that is really about intellectual capacity and development, it is sort of is someone going to like catch me on this and call me to the carpet? Because this would not have flown at the grocery store. What are you doing,
Yeah.
David? Well, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about produce. No, that would
Yeah.
not have flown.
And in some ways, it leads me to one of your other questions, which is that sort of, what do you wish you had known?
Yeah, let's move on to that.
And it makes me think that imagination time is so important as a young person when you are being often discouraged from doing that. But I don't think you ever get to be a great poet or songwriter or writer or visual artist, or you don't get to be those things if you aren't living in an imaginary world a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and discovering what you could create out of that. Right? If your brain is always filled with cap, 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 right? Like that, so
Yeah.
concrete, that's not necessarily the place where, really great creativity comes from. So
Yeah,
I also think there is a certain amount of, telling young people to have some permission to imagine,
yeah.
to spend time in that creativity space that that may or may not lead to a novel, but at least at least it doesn't just dismiss that's possible and potential in everyone.
But here's the other thing I think is really important. Um, we also know that that's what leads to scientific breakthroughs and new math equations and, different ways to convey an argument in a courtroom. I mean, it is not just the purview of the true artist. It's the piece that makes us human.
Yeah.
And so whatever your role is in life, I think everybody needs that unplugged time. I read something once that was so important to me. It said, we're doing our children a disservice because they don't even have to dream at a stoplight anymore because they immediately can check their phone. I mean, think how much time, think about a family vacation when you're in the back seat of the car and you're driving from Minnesota or North Dakota to California. You're not streaming movies. You're not listening to music. You might have a book. And in my case, this was the entire experience of my childhood family vacations. My mom would turn around and say to me, Dana, take your head out of that book and look at the scenery. Because I was just like this the entire car ride. I could have just as well been in my bedroom. But there's no dream time anymore because we have ensured that our children are perpetually entertained. Well,
Yeah.
there's going to be a price to pay for that for all of us because
Yeah.
we're all better with a download and an upload.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the adage of necessity is the mother of invention is still so true, and particularly when it comes to this kind of just filling the input all the time. Not only is there not that space for your self imagination, but you don't necessarily have that sort of, I don't know, that thing in your imagination that says, "Ooh, now I want to go pursue this,"
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Or there's a thread that I want to pull on.
Mhm.
It's so easy for it to just go poof.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate having learned from David actually is the importance of unplugging to get into the backcountry. I mean, that is one of the things about the backcountry that has been really amazing,
Mhm.
is the unplug. And for us as a family, we always did a family book while on an adventure. And I think that really helped our kids learn to entertain themselves in a variety of ways when traveling, right?
Yep.
And if you can raise a good traveler, and if you can raise a person who can sleep anywhere, I think then you've pretty much done your job as a parent.
I think that's true. And I will say, you did that in spades. Man, I mean, I can sleep anywhere. I look like an insomniac compared to where your children can sleep. So
Oh
yes,
yeah, and
applause for you.
I think it is still serving them well, right? When I think about Linka and her crazy work shifts in emergency rooms,
Oh,
she just, the fact that she can just, oh, now this is the time I get to eat and this is the time I get to sleep, and she can manage that without it driving her completely crazy. I'm like, oh, wow, good. Okay, that is a
that was
gift
a
I
big
didn't
one.
really quite realize
Yep.
how its impact might actually ripple out into the world.
Yeah, super interesting. Mother wants to comment that today she's glad. I'm glad. She's certain that she yelled at me about looking out of the window instead of reading. I probably am. I mean, I did really like those teenage romance novels, but this is all right. I'm sure I'm happy to, Mother. All right, last question, Carrie. Tell us one or two of the most joyful aspects in your life since turning 50.
Joyful aspects of my life since turning 50. Well, I don't know. I gotta say, having a couple of snow days has been really fun.
Mhm.
I mean, the pandemic did this anyway, right? It just really isolated us, and at first it had that sort of romanticized feel of this is like a snow day.
You're right. It absolutely did.
And I have these people in my house, and we're going to cook and we're going to play games and blah blah, and then it got to be pretty wearing, and I'm amazed at how it's changed me. I am more of a homebody than I ever imagined I would be. But in the last few days, like David and I have been cooking together, and we've been intentionally kind of shifting which responsibilities we each have because he's the baker in our family, right? He's a pie master. I have never really made pie crust, and it's something that we were really intent about teaching the kids how to make.
Mhm.
Well, my default was then I'm a really great pie filling maker, and I'm going to keep the dishes washed while other people, there's only so many people who can be standing by the pastry cloth and rolling a pin at a time
It's true.
and those kinds of things. And it's like the other day we went ahead and made a salmon quiche together, and I made the crust, and it was amazing. And I was like, oh, okay. It only took 30 years of marriage for me to realize that I've just relied on David to do this. And I
Yeah.
said, I think if I'm ever going to make you a pie, I need the same kind of maybe years of training that the kids have.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of joyful, is appreciating the time when we are isolated, whether
Mhm.
it's just to the two of us or whether the kids are here and often their friends too. And appreciating those times has been really joyful. Um, I don't know what else. I'm trying to think.
Those are delightful. You can stop there if you want to. It's not a mandatory answer. But here's what I appreciate about that answer, Carrie. It's it is immediate and it is present.
Mm,
This snow day, as opposed to like, oh, I've loved, travel, whatever. Those answers are also fantastic. But I think so often we get caught up in the big thing that's coming that we miss the tiny little gifts, the joyful moments that happen just right now. So I really love that reminder of this snow day is one of the most joyful aspects of my life. I think that's really beautiful.
yeah.
All right. I loved this conversation. It's always fun to connect with you because we do have a very long history now. 20 plus years.
I
Long.
know, it's crazy.
I've known
It's
you longer
crazy.
than you have had your theater company. So that says something. So thank
Well, and I when I was thinking about lessons and sort of what I've learned, I often I have to tell you, I think about you. I think about things you've taught me over the
Hmm.
years, right? And particularly now, that just even the asking of these questions, the taking time to consider, to catalog what's important, and to dream about what you want down the road. Those are just, yeah, and just living into it, right? Living into what your own needs are. You've been such a model for that. About, what's good for me, what's not good for me. How do I say yes to what's good for me and let go of what's not? Those have been tough, but really important lessons. And I often do think of, oh, Dana figured this out. Okay,
Hmm.
I can keep working on it.
Well, that means a lot to me. I appreciate that greatly. And I loved this time with you. I loved thinking back to a very different time in our lives when our kids were little and crazy and life felt bonkers. And boy, I wouldn't trade those years for anything. And I'm not sad to still be in them, to not still be in them.
Oh yeah, no. That question of, what if you could be 15 or 50, would you pick? And I'm like, oh, 50. No, no, no question.
Yeah, I'm going to pick 50 as well. So thank you, Carrie. Merry
Thank you,
Christmas.
Dana.
Enjoy your next time out in backcountry. I hope you get that opportunity to just unplug, and we'll connect in the new year.
Oh, safe travels to you and have a beautiful trip and a very happy birthday.
Thank you. Everyone else, I will see you live tomorrow right before we leave for England. So we'll see you then. Bye. Oh, wait, let me tell you. We'll see
Oh,
you at 10, not 11. 10 a.m. tomorrow, not 11 because of my flight. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks.
can I also